Ladies being more intelligent and successful than their husbands. This actually is an asset for them. But as we mentioned, that if a man can't take it, then it turns the other way around. We also mentioned that nothing is wrong for a lady to choose to be a housewife and giving more time to her home and family. And we mentioned that men are expected to spend money to take care of the needs of the family. And also mentioned about the position of authority. If this is given to a man, it's because of the responsibility that the man needs to shoulder. And once that self-esteem is gone, then he does other things to make himself feel masculine. We also discussed that men who aren't narcissists, they show mercy and appreciation to the lady who is helping them out. But men who aren't ready to make and to move on, they use the kids. They become like the fun father. Also, we discuss about developing disorders in children like disrespect, verbal abuse, physical abuse, toleration. Also, this becomes is what a good wife or husband should be. This is what love is, and codependence carry many unresolved childhood issues. Now, codependency and its consequences all fall under the disease of the heart because they involve neglecting the needs and rights of the soul, nafs, and body significantly as a result of being attached to a person or people and investing more in them than having the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mawlana.
Ji, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Jazakumullah for that, Marana. Although we are coming back after some time, I think it's necessary that we just give a few disclaimers as we have reminded our viewers on Ummahat and on Radio Islam and the listeners that firstly, we need to understand that we are no experts in this field. We are only discussing some issues that we feel is necessary to discuss. We also made mention, and I want to repeat that one should not self-diagnose that you are guilty of being a narcissist or a codependent. There are, alhamdulillah, very able professional people, Muslim psychologists, coaches, life coaches that you can go to. We had some of them on our radio, on our previous programs, where you can get professional help. And professional help in this field is of utmost importance. We are just discussing some of the things that is required to be discussed. Now, as you have said, Morana, that codependence relies so much on people's approval that they'll put themselves at risk. And sometimes when they prioritize them over Allah and commit sometimes even major sins to impress and please people. And from all that we have discussed, we may understand how codependents each possess various levels of nafs al-lawwama. According to where they are in their healing journey, their level of faith and their level of iman in Allah and in the strength of their codependency disorder and traits. And they can all display a very high level of empathy, very high level of kindness. However, this empathy and kindness, when they display it, it's many a times or sometimes mixed with a low self-love, a low self-respect, and even sometimes at the detriment of their iman, faith in Allah, and dini guidance. And it becomes sometimes problematic, it becomes confusing and complex. It becomes a complex Muslim personality to deal with. And therefore, we say that whilst there is, alhamdulillah, many professional guides and help people that can help you, the Islamic perspective of that has to be kept in mind so that we can establish the right balance between the emotional disorders, and the guidance of Islam. And it is because of that that we are having these discussions. And due to a lack of education about Islam and human behavior, codependents are easy to be manipulated and they are easily led astray. They are easily influenced in school, in college, university, in the workplace, and they can deviate from their parents' teachings and Islamic principles if they get involved with the wrong people. And they usually try to do what's right, but lose themselves in the process because all that matters to them is that they are loved and they fit in where they want to belong. And as they have the ability and the will to change for someone they love, so a codependent within themselves, they have the ability and the will to change for someone they love. They can be guided with the help of good friends, good counseling. They can be guided by professional help to discover the rewards of making the necessary changes to heal and love themselves. So, this is what we had discussed up until now.
Mm.
We're now going on to a very, very sensitive discussion, Morana. And I know that I need to give a disclaimer here again that what we are going to discuss now might be sensitive to some of our viewers or some of our listeners. And I would say that use your discretion. If you feel uncomfortable, you may switch it off. But these are things that we are observing in our society, in our community, and it is necessary to discuss these things. As you know, we say that when there's an elephant in the room, introduce the elephant.
Mm.
So that's what we are going to do. We're going to be discussing some issues which is related to the broader discussion and the broader topic of our discussion. And that is the need for sexual validation among codependents. Now, I know sometimes when you use the word sexual, we raise our eyebrows, but we need to firstly understand that Islam is such a beautiful deen, it is such a balanced deen that even these sensitive issues are discussed in a very matured and a very balanced way. Like in the Quran Kareem, these topics are discussed. Even in the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the topics relating to intimacy, etc., are discussed in a very balanced, very open, very transparent way, always keeping in mind the concept of taqwa when we discuss this. So I think I had to give this disclaimer. Now, when we say the need for sexual validation among codependent Muslims, now just for the benefit of our listeners and our viewers, we had discussed the definition of codependent.
Mm.
I will just repeat it again so that we understand what we are talking about. So it is someone who is characterized by excessive emotional or psychological reliance on someone else or on a partner, typically one who requires support on account of an illness or an addiction. So you go with her all the time because you are a little codependent. So that's the meaning here. Now, again, I'm saying that we are going to discuss this. So I'll talk about a subject today, inshallah, that's not generally openly discussed in our communities. So we're going to be discussing something that's not generally openly discussed in our communities, but inshallah will significantly help to put things into context, because we are living in an environment that sometimes becomes very pervert environment, and we're seeing a lot of things happening, and therefore there is a need for us to discuss what we are going to be discussing. So we are going to talk about this. We're going to talk about Muslims primarily who use lovemaking, intimacy to manipulate others into getting what they want. Now, remember when we talked about narcissism and all of that, there is a great deal of manipulation. And a friend of mine who called me, who is also in the field of psychology, he had some issues regarding the concept and the definition. And there is this whole concept of attachment. So many people assume that it's just narcissists who do this. But many codependent Muslim women also would use their feminists and even lovemaking, intimacy as a tool or as a way of obtaining attention and love. So again, I'm saying we are discussing things that is a bit sensitive, but bear with me, and we're going to be discussing this in a very open, transparent, matured way. So commitment and validation from the men they want to be with. So we find that many women, or instead of saying many women, I would say there are some women who would use their feminists and sometimes even the extent of infatuation, having an illicit affair as a tool, as a way of obtaining attention, as a way of commitment, as a way of validation from the men they want to be with. And as codependents have learned that love must be earned, many feel during this problematic era of casual hookups and even to the effect of intimacy, which we are noticing unfortunately today more frequently than ever before, generally in society, and unfortunately even in the Muslim Ummah, where we are finding that we're noticing more frequently than ever before casual affairs, casual hookups, and even just chatting because of the social media, etc. And therefore there is a need for us to discuss this. So they many people and many some women may feel that they can impress men sexually, then they will earn their commitment, but this is often very far from the truth. Now, I'm saying all this because sometimes in our day-to-day interactions with people, and because of the presence of shaitan, Maulana, this aspect of shaitan and the presence of shaitan, sometimes we underplay the presence of shaitan, and we don't give importance to the presence of shaitan in our societies. And in the Quran Kareem, it is very clear that shaitan has made this promise to Allah Ta'ala that he is going to divert people from the straight path. And he is all the time at work. And as we're getting closer to the ends of times, we are going to find more of these types of things happening. And therefore, there is a need for us to discuss these issues. And the purpose of discussing this is firstly, so that we are conscious, we live a conscious life, we live a mindful life, and we live a life where we are aware of the traps of shaitan, so that our innocent Muslim men and women do not fall prey to these traps that may happen and we observing. So that's the reason. I must clearly state here that it is not all codependent Muslim women are like others, or not all of them will behave the same way. It all depends on their level of codependency and, most importantly, their level of iman and the level of taqwa, which will influence the status and which will also influence the position of their nafs. So there is shaitan playing, and there is the element of the nafs. And in our past discussions, we have discussed the aspects of the various categories of the nafs. Now, we come to be aware, and I have come to be aware of confessions from codependent Muslim women about the tricks and strategies they used to seduce some of the men, mostly Muslim, they liked, sometimes into an intimate relationship out of the hope that they will like them. Now, most, if not all Muslim narcissists, most, if not all Muslim narcissists, men will take advantage of any offers of intimacy, any offers of sexual favors that come their way from attractive women, because this saves them from making the efforts needed to love bomb them first. And we spoke about love bombing previously. So when a narcissist sees that a woman is eager to please and impress him, he no longer feels the need to chase or work hard to get her, and immediately loses respect because he perceives her as being desperate. And here I want to use these terms, and I'm talking about this. And the most important reason that we are talking is that we do not want our unassuming, innocent Muslim sisters to fall prey to these types of traps that shaitan, the nafs, and some narcissist men will use. If a narcissist wishes to break the self-esteem of a woman and make her question her attractiveness, he will deliberately reject her advances in the beginning. That's how they do. And this often causes a codependent to keep trying for being validated, which inflates the narcissist's ego. And when he finally decides to take advantage, she considers it an achievement. And unfortunately, we are observing many of these things happening in our societies, and and the social media, the WhatsApp chat groups. These are platforms that many of them are using, and therefore there is a need for us to discuss these things in a very open manner, so that, again, and I'm repeating it repeatedly, so that we live a mindful, conscious life. So you may wonder sometimes how some Muslim women find it easy to fall into this trap, or how can they commit such major sins while some of them appear to be practicing. Are they considered to be, hypocrites? And many people are quick to wrongly judge others for the sins they commit without knowing the reasons behind them and what they've been through in life. Although this is no reason or license to be in an act of sin, but there is a background to why some people behave in this way. And we're going into the psychological aspect of it. And as we go along, we will discuss this. And there are various reasons, besides needing and wanting love, besides needing attention, besides needing validation, that can explain this behavior among some of our innocent sisters that fall prey to these advances of some men. One of the reasons is that some women were sexually abused when they were younger by someone or some people who were meant to take care of them. Being sexually abused as a child can result in people either becoming very sexually active as adults or not active at all. So one of the reasons is being abused when you were a child, sexually abused when you were a child. And the impact and the effects of that can be either you become extremely active or you become totally non-active at all. So again, while we are saying that if you get caught up in this, uh, it is a sin. There's no doubt about it. Whilst we are saying that, we are also not passing any judgments on people. But what we are doing is we are talking about the reasons why these things appear. And these reasons are things that we need to be considerate about. We need to be aware of it. And inshallah, as we go along, we'll even talk about how to address that, inshallah. So for example, for some people, intimacy triggers bad memories. It triggers traumas for them. So they avoid it completely. Some women spent all their lives feeling dirty and worthless because of the sexual abuse that they experienced. Sometimes it even happens, and we see examples of that, we hear examples of that. We are living in a very perverse society where sometimes they are even raped. We are also witnessing cases of incest, na'udhu billah, in our communities, unfortunately. So some women who are being abused or who have been abused sexually spent all or much of their lives feeling dirty. They feel worthless because of the sexual abuse or repeatedly abused. So when they grow up, they felt that they had nothing to lose as they were already damaged and no longer had a noble life to protect. Many would continue allowing men to use and abuse them, unfortunately, or rather, I would not say many, some, to reinforce their internal beliefs that they are worthless. And we are seeing, unfortunately, many, manifestations of this psychology among some women. Now, again, I'm saying it is not all women, and we're not passing any judgments, but we are talking about these things so that we may safeguard our sisters, and our sisters must be aware of these things so that if they were abused in any way, they need to go to professional people to get the right assistance, help, coaching to remove this trauma and this bad memories from them. In fact, some women have confessed. And as I discussed with some of the counselors, some women have confessed to counselors who have said that they came across women who told them that they either spent long periods of time not bathing or having showers totally. This could be from a few days to 2 to 3 weeks to reinforce the belief that they are dirty or disgusting. Or some of them have even developed chronic case of OCD and showered excessively in order to feel cleansed psychologically and physically from the shame they were always carrying. Either way, they were suffering in silence and didn't know how to speak to and who to speak to about it or how to heal themselves mentally, emotionally, and most importantly, even spiritually. So these women learned in childhood that intimacy can be used as a way to either manipulate men or to gain self worth because they were rewarded as children after they were used for someone else's pleasure. And this is the things that we need to be extremely careful. And therefore, we find the laws of hijab and the laws of Islam and the morality that Islam teaches us is all there to safeguard these unnecessary things that takes place. Now, I know I'm saying all these things. To some, this may not be factual, but the harsh reality is these things are happening, and we need to address these ills that are now being observed in our communities. Firstly, to be cognizant and to be aware that this happens, and also to guide how to manage these abuse and traumas. And again, I'm saying again repeatedly, if anyone have suffered this type of abuse, please do yourself a favor, go and get professional help. There are many Muslim psychologists, there are many Muslim life coaches that will be able to assist you in dealing with these types of things. As these women, both narcissists and codependents, who did not receive the professional help and who did not receive the support they needed while growing up, their sexual traumas become a driving force that control their lives. Some are unable to separate their practicing Muslim identities from their strong need to earn love via sexual favors. And so, even though some of them pray all 5 daily prayers and even observe the fast of Ramadan, sometimes, unfortunately, they also continue to engage in illicit relationships, unfortunately. These women hoped that they would be able to earn a man's commitment to them if they prove themselves worthy, because that's all they believed they had to offer. While growing up, they did not learn how to attach any value to their other achievements, because they were not rewarded for their other achievements as they were for their compliance of those that abused them. And this type of abuse can happen to many highly emphatic children, highly emphatic teenagers, but they are more likely than others to receive help and counseling for it, as they are usually surrounded by loving and caring people who they can talk to. So, here again, advice to parents: be observant, recognize certain body languages of your children. If you are doubting anything, even if it is the slightest of suspicion, and encourage and create an environment where your children are able to come openly to talk to you about these things, so that they are able to be helped. And if you don't do that, unfortunately, this will last long, and it will become and it will have a negative impact on their growing and how they deal with these things as they grow. Narcissists and codependents, however, are sometimes too ashamed to inform their parents, who may have their own issues, and other people. They may find it difficult to speak to their parents or other people about it, because they are going through their own issues, either out of fear and because they don't want to be blamed, or they don't want to be punished. They don't want to be disgraced. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be humiliated. They don't want to be looked down upon. They don't want to be pitied. And it is for all these reasons and these fears that many children who are sexually abused as young children would not come out to talk about it. It is important to mention here that men also get sexually abused when they are children, but they are far less likely than girls to tell anyone about it. And it can be a secret they take with them to the grave. The majority of men, or many who were abused by people they trusted, many boys are abused by people they trusted, by people they grow up to be narcissists, as they take their anger, their shame, their frustration out on everyone around them. So, how does a person become narcissist in this field? So, sometimes a young boy was abused, sexually abused, and they were sexually abused by people they trusted, by people they grow up with. And this also is a reason why some men become narcissistic, because what they now do is they take out this anger, this shame, this frustration out on everyone around them. Men who are abused by people they trusted grow up to be narcissists. Many Muslim boys were unfortunately molested and abused in places such as their own homes, hostels, schools, and I'm going to say it here, even in the mosques, madrasas, by their relatives sometimes, by imams, by teachers, by ustads, by caretakers, and even fellow learners in hostels. This is something that we need to address. It's no sense of sweeping it under the carpet. If, as a parent, you have observed any unnatural behavior, investigate so that your children don't grow up with this trauma and become and don't develop this disorder. If it is one of the reasons why some Muslim narcissists resent religious teachers, they resent ulama, they resent the shuyukh and imams, and even refuse to go to the masjid or let their children go either, to go and live in hostels, etc. Since in our situation, much of this abuse unfortunately takes place in these places where there are boys' lodgings or girl lodgings. And they grow up with very deep trust issues, and they become addicted, unfortunately, as a result of these types of abuse, to pornography, and they tend to have abnormal sexual desires. Codependent men, on the other hand, who were abused as children, often grow up to be very quiet sometimes, reserved, and even shy away from any sexual contact. And if they were abused by men, then there's a chance they may have been conditioned to perceive men in a sexual way, which makes it more likely for them to develop emotional and sexual feelings for other men in young adulthood. We unfortunately are also witnessing, unfortunately, a normalization of same-sex inclinations. And this is usually kept as a secret, as the element of shame is strong within them. This is why in Islam we are taught to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in all his fairness, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in all his justice, has created everyone upon his pure fitrah, which means that no one is born with sins and homosexual desires or lesbian desires. It is the upbringing, it is the traumas, it is the experience, the relationships, the environments that people have been through that shape and influence the outcome of their characters, that shapes the outcome of their faith and iman, that shapes the outcome of their mental health, and with regards to the discussion that we are having, that shapes the outcome of their sexual orientation, their sins, and their life choices. Yes, Marana, you want to talk about something? I know I've spoken so much. If there are any of our listeners who might have wanting to say something before I continue.
See, there's another, the listener saying it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the clutches of shaitan that we mentioned in the beginning and guide us, but it is very easy to fall into this trap, especially with self-esteem issues, validation. Allah forgive us, it's scary out there. Sister Fatima saying, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Manana, alhamdulillah for this kind of program, because one will think that no ulama will tackle the very underbelly of what is happening in the community. Some people think there is no place for them in Islam due to self-hatred, so they think rather go to the dark side. Also, when children go through trauma like parents divorce and they go to live with other family, they have psychological problems they have seen in one sister-in-law and get married with this baggage.
Gee. Anything from your side, Mara? I said a lot. Maybe you should just add some things that you want to before we continue.
Just one question coming up. Why would they want to be with these people? You know, a codependent and a narcissist. Isn't there a way out?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Morana, and that's the whole definition of a codependent, but I'm going to come to that. Inshallah, there is a separate section where we are going to talk about why do these people hang on. Right, so inshallah, jazakallah for that, and we will address that inshallah. So, okay, another reason that codependent women are involved in unlawful relationships is because they have friends who engage in these illicit relationships with men, and they have seen what they believe to be positive outcomes from their immoral behavior. So I'm just going to repeat what I'm saying.
Mm.
Another reason that some codependent women remain involved or get involved in unlawful relationships is because they have friends who engage in unlawful relationships with men, and these women seen what they believe to be positive outcomes from their immoral behavior. For example, a woman confessed that a few of her Muslim friends have boyfriends, and they have boyfriends at universities, and unfortunately sometimes they even sleeping with them for a long period of time, and men were committed to them and eventually married them, right? So because they married them, they found that that was a positive outcome, but
Mm.
it's in their perception, it's not necessarily. And this leads them to believe that there was no real harm being done if at the end of the day they could halalify the relationship by getting married when they are both ready. And this is totally against the Sharia. It just brings unnecessary bad luck. It brings the wrath of Allah upon them. And the whole blessings of barakah of marriage and a chaste life is taken away. Another reason is because some women are very insecure. Part of the answer to your question, Morana.
Mm.
Some women are very insecure and they need to prove to men that they are attractive, that they are beautiful, even under the hijab, that they believe makes them unattractive and even ugly. So it's just a matter of self esteem, self respect. Some women, although very few, and this is something that I recall once Sheikh Shuraim gave a Jummah khutbah on this.
Mm.
And it is something that we need to keep in mind. Some women, although very few, would wear a hijab only for cultural reasons or as an effort to be good Muslims or to be seen as good Muslims to please their families. And some will even wear the hijab because they believe they don't have nice hair anyway to show off and so look better with it. Whatever the reason, they will meet the hijab halfway by attempting to sexualize it as the first step in the mission to feel better about themselves. Now, what do I mean by sexualizing the hijab? And this is exactly the topic that Sheikh Shuraim spoke about at one of his Jummah. It means that clothing may be very tight and sometimes even revealing. Excessive makeup may be heavy. Uh, High heels may be, your heels may be very high. Perfume may be very strong. And these are things that go totally contrary to the ideology and the concept of hijab. And despite some women dressing this way to get attention and to get validation for their beauty and whatever, they would also complain that Muslim men have either used them in short flings, dismissed them for marriage because they were judged and perceived to be loose, or because the men were still unable to see if they would be really attracted to them, as they weren't showing all of their bodies, their hair. So men, including non-Muslim men, will say this just as a test to see how far Muslim women will go to remove the hijab and expose their bodies and their sexuality. If they don't fall for it at all, they will be respected and left alone, sometimes after a couple more tests. And if they do fall for it, then they lose the respect. So, my beloved sisters, be careful. Understand the morality, understand the modesty of hijab. Do not use the hijab and then at the same time go around with high heels, lots of makeup, lots of perfume. You are attracting unnecessary attention. And as we said, Shaitan is there to lead you astray. Ji Morana.
It's so true, man. Today's time, you say, people saying that when you look at people, certain as we say, the females wearing clothes, you say, the scarf is for Allah and the rest of the stuff is for Abdullah. And it's very ironic, like, you're wearing such a tight scarf, but you're showing the shape of your body.
So again, coming back, keep in mind the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The eyes commit zina, the ears commit zina, the hand commits zina. So in this discussion that we are having, this hadith should always be kept in mind. Narcissists are known to not keep their promises. And so the way they get out of fulfilling them is by cheating on their partners and informing them of it so that they hate them and leave. And this is always a very traumatic experience for the codependent, who may panic and not know what to do because they've committed a major sin with someone who has now betrayed them. So when we're talking about how some narcissist men will take advantage of certain unassuming, innocent women, and later they will just discard them, and you, this innocent sister, would feel discarded, and it will have a lifelong negative impact on you. And therefore, again, we're saying that the only reason we are having these discussions is so that you are aware of these things and you do not fall prey to these advances, and you remain someone who is always modest, and you maintain your morality, inshallah.
Inshallah. Well, we have a few aids to
Yeah, we can complete here.
we can complete here for today. And yeah, let us just digest what was said towards the end. This narcissism, we gave the reasons why females do certain acts. And at the end, remember that the narcissist men will always take advantage of such females and thereafter discard them. And this is when, the codependent, especially that females that were codependents, this is when they break down.
Inshallah. Jazakumullah, man. Just before we conclude, again, there are things that we spoke of. We ask our sisters to understand the context, or our men and brothers to understand the context in which we spoke. And again, if there is any signs that you feel that needs attention, please seek professional help, and this will help to build your self-esteem, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Rapid, packet,